finally, the most important thing we're going to talk about today. Okay, so first of all, a reference angle, looking at this definition, a reference angle alpha of an angle theta is the acute angle formed by the terminal side of theta and the x-axis. All right, that's kind of hard to picture, so let's draw a picture. We don't really talk about reference angles in the first quadrant, so let's start with the second quadrant. If you have an angle in the second quadrant, it looks like this. So theta is this guy right here. Agreed? Does everybody agree with that statement? Okay, alpha is, so here's the terminal side. This side right here is the terminal side. Alpha is the smallest angle formed by this terminal side and the x-axis. So alpha in the second quadrant looks like this. That's alpha. That's your reference angle. Now, looking at this picture and realizing the straight angle is 180 degrees, if you know theta, how can you find alpha? So, guys, this is the formula. So alpha has got to equal 180 minus theta. Now, that's in the second quadrant, which is why I'm positioning this formula in the second quadrant. That works in the second quadrant. In other words, when theta's in the second quadrant, then alpha and theta are, what's the word? They add to 180, what's the word? They are supplementary. Okay, but it changes if theta's in the third quadrant. The formula changes if theta's in the third quadrant, and the way you find alpha changes. So let's go to the picture in the third quadrant. In the third quadrant, theta looks like this. And then remember what alpha is. The terminal side is down here. Alpha is the smallest angle formed by this terminal side and the x-axis. So it's got to be, does everybody see what it is? It's got to be, alpha's got to be this angle here. But again, if the straight angle is 180 degrees, can you come up with a formula? I'll put the formula right here in the third quadrant. Can anybody come up with a formula then for finding alpha? Well, okay, so here the big angle is not 180 like it was over here, right? The big one of the angles we look at is 180, right? And that would be the bigger angle. 180 would be 180 would be that angle right there, right? Here the big angle is actually theta, right? Because theta is bigger than 180. So if you wanted to find alpha, what could you do? No, never ever look at the y-axis when finding reference angles. A lot of students make that mistake, but never ever look at the y-axis. Always look at the x-axis, okay? If you look at the definition, it doesn't mention the y-axis. Okay, so you've got a bigger number, right? That's theta. The smaller number, or angle in this case, angle measure, is 180. And you want to look at the picture. You want to find alpha. What do you have to do? So it's got to be the bigger minus the smaller, right? Theta minus 180. So theta, the big angle, right? In green here, minus 180, the straight angle. I don't have it pictured here, but there's 180, right? What's left over is the angle in blue, alpha. Everybody see how the formula changes? It switches around. Does everybody see that? That's if your angle is in the third quadrant and you're looking for the reference angle alpha. That's the formula you use. Okay, finally, similar picture, but we're going to draw it in, we're going to draw theta in the fourth quadrant. So if we do that, okay, the initial side coincides with the x-axis. The terminal side you want to draw in the fourth quadrant so that theta then is this big old angle here. So that's theta, right? And then you guys see what alpha is? alpha is this angle here, isn't it? The smallest angle formed by the terminal side of theta and the x-axis. The smallest angle. So there's another angle, this angle here, but it's not the smallest. Okay. Everybody see that? So alpha is always acute. Your reference angle is always acute. Okay, so instead of, there's no reason to refer to 180 over here, but I will refer to the fact that if you go all the way around, if you go one full revolution, how many degrees is that? 360. So one full revolution is 360. And theta is this big angle right here, but 360 is even bigger. How are you going to find alpha? So alpha is going to equal 360, the bigger angle here minus the theta, which it's a big angle, but it's not as big as 360, right? And alpha is the leftover angle. 360 minus theta, that's alpha. So there's your formulas by quadrant for finding alpha. Is that clear? Everybody see that? Any questions? Don't ever look at the y-axis to find alpha, okay? Never, ever, ever. So I want you guys to try this one. Given that theta is 125 degrees, by the way, which quadrant is that? Quadrant 2. I'd like you guys to take a second to try and find the reference angle, call it alpha. That little fishy looking symbol, it's a Greek letter alpha. So I'm going to start the picture here. And let me do it in pink. Okay, so what's alpha going to equal? 180 minus 125, and what's that? 55. Okay, good. Okay, so you don't have to draw this part of it, but in pictures, this part then is 55. And but this is what you do if it's in the second quadrant. But look at the picture. In the picture, you wouldn't have had that right away. But you do know that this angle here is 180. The straight angle is 180. So you can figure out, oh, the leftover angle, that's alpha, and that's got to be 180 minus 125. Okay. Any questions on that? Yes?
How did you know it was in the second quadrant?
Angles in the second quadrant, if you think about it, the angle straight up is 90 degrees. The straight angle is 180. And 125 is in between 90 and 180. So right away, with a little bit of practice, right away you'll know which quadrant it is in just by looking at it. 210. 210 is in between what two angles? 180 and 270, which puts it in the third quadrant. Okay, go ahead and try and find the reference angle for 210 degrees. And if you need to, and I think most people do, draw this picture, right? And then I'll give you a second to come up with it. Okay, what are you doing to get alpha? By the way, which one's alpha? Let me quiz you a little bit. Is this guy alpha right here? Is that alpha? Never involve the y. I can't say this enough. Never. You can see a few students. I'm excited about this. A few students have done this in the past, right? Never involve the y-axis in finding alpha. Never, ever, ever, ever. Alpha is going to be this angle, right? So make sure your picture's drawn correctly. Okay, so what's alpha going to be? Don't tell me the process for getting it. You take the bigger angle, which is 210, minus the straight angle, 180. And what does that give you? 30 degrees. Easy enough? That's how you find alpha, the reference angle, if your given angle is in the third quadrant. Finally, 315. We'll do that together. If you draw the 315, it looks something like that. And then what's alpha? Got to be, is it this guy? No, it's got to be this guy, right? So how do you find it? Take one full rotation, right? Minus the given angle, and that should be the leftover angle. Alpha is the leftover angle. So alpha, your reference angle, is 360 minus 315, and what is that? 45 degrees.